On.
Hi, in this short tutorial, I'm going to share with you how to set up basic turns for your robot using the move steering block, which we looked at in our previous video. Now, as we go through here, again, I'm going to refer you to the little document over here because we're going to talk about basically two types of turns, pivot turns and spin turns. Now, when you have your students turn their robots, the best way or the easiest way to do it in a predictable and easy to sort of understand method is to have the students focus on having the robot basically turn in place. So not move and turn at the same time in a nice gentle arc. That would be awesome, but it's also very unpredictable and difficult to program. So instead, we I encourage you to teach your students to basically have the robot drive in straight lines and then turn into a direction and then continue on in a straight line. That is usually the most reliable and best way to get results that you can reproduce. So, doing so, you do that using the move steering block. Again, if you have this value here at 0, the robot will drive in a straight line. But instead, we want to make it turn right or left. Now, if I click on this here, you'll see it brings up this little steering toggle. I can actually slide this little thing, and you see as I slide the toggle here to the left and right, you'll see that the icon above the value will change. Now, the positive and negative number here, much like with the power, determines whether the robot turns to the left or turns to the right. Now, you see I can set it at any value between 0 and 100 and 0 and negative 100, and again, with 0 being straight. But I'm going to have you focus basically on 3 basic conditions. And that's if you want the robot to go straight, set this value to be 0. If you want it to turn right using what's known as a pivot turn, you're going to use the numbers positive 50 or negative 50. And if you want it to turn to spin move, you're going to use positive 100 or negative 100. Now, as you see it, and you probably sort of distractedly watching me trying to get this set, using this little toggle, it's very difficult to get it to an exact number. So much like you can do with the rotations or the power, I can switch on this little toggle, which will bring up the calculator-like thing, and I can go ahead and manually enter the value I want. So I'm going to start with what's known as a pivot turn. So I'm going to set this to 50. Now you'll see the icon above is a right angle here where it turns to the right. Now the way a pivot turn works is that it only turns one motor of your robot. So in this case, to do a right-handed turn, what will happen is the right motor will actually lock and the left motor will turn forward at 50 power and 1 rotation. Now this will turn the robot and basically use that right tire as a pivot point, and the robot will pivot along that point and sort of turn towards that direction. Now, when you look at this here, students might look at it and you might ask students to maybe have your robot turn 90 degrees. And so students will look at here and click up on your little toggle and see that they can turn it on for degrees. Now remember, when we do on for degrees, that's actually not turn 90 degrees in terms of the physical robot. That refers to the number of degrees that the motor itself will rotate. And so 90 degrees, just doing the simple math, would be 1/4 of a rotation. So it actually, the amount that your robot will turn is really going to be a function of 2 things, and that's this value here, the number of rotations, and the size of your tire. Okay, so similar as traveling distance. So students, again, will have to trial and error to get the proper turn here. And again, another opportunity to promote graphing and data collection. It's a great tool to get students to sort of put in values, measure how much it turns. You can also use protractor skills and other measuring skills. So now if I want to make it turn left, again, I can click on it here, going back. And again, I'm going to go ahead with the number here. And if students need to enter a negative value, they're just going to hit the plus or minus sign here. And you'll see the negative sign, and I can put negative 50. And you see in doing so, the arrow icon up here turns to the left, and the robot theoretically should turn towards the left at 50 power for 1 rotation. And again, in order to turn 90 degrees, they will have to adjust this number off the top of my head right now, I actually don't know what that value is. But what you will find, because all the students are using the same robot at this time with the same wheelbase and the same size tires, that value should be pretty consistent between all your different students. Okay. Now, if you don't want to use a pivot turn and you want to use a different type of turn, the other turn I would suggest you use is what's known as a spin turn. Now, this one you can use the toggle switch because you're going all the way, maxing it out to either side. So this is a full 100 or negative 100. Okay, now the difference between a spin turn and a pivot turn is a couple things. The main thing is with a spin turn, you have both tires moving. And so the two tires will actually move in opposite directions. And so that will produce a tighter turn and a faster turn, okay, because you have two turns working. It actually changes the axis of turning so that the center of your turn now is located not on one of the two tires, but instead at the center directly between your two tires. So this, like I said, will produce a tighter turn. It's a good thing to have your students compare where their robot is when it starts and where it ends between a spin turn and a pivot turn, because it does they end up in different places, and it's something that it's interesting for them to explore. And again, in order to get the amount of turn, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, again, it's going to be based on the value here of the number of rotations. That does change, again, depending on the size of the tire. So it's a function of tire size and number of rotations here. Students will most likely, again, come to through trial and error, but I would encourage them to use some sort of data collection here to help get a predictable, repeatable result. Okay. Now, again, students can set these values from anywhere between 0 and 100. So you can have a 73 or 22. But those results will be very difficult to predict exactly how far and how much your robot's going to turn. I do encourage you that you really just promote with your students, and you'll see that I'll do this, that they really deal with just the three sets of numbers: 0, plus or minus 50, plus or minus 100. And that will give them the most consistent and reliable results. Okay, that's going to conclude the basic turn video. In the next one last tutorial, I'm going to show you how to string together a few different commands to get your robot maybe to follow a very simple path. Okay, thank you. And